All right, let's talk about an investment, but not the kind you measure in dollars and cents. This one is about conviction. It's about protecting a creative vision against all odds. We're going to dive into this through one of the riskiest bets in Hollywood history. Let's get right into it.
So let me ask you something. When you hear that word producer, especially in a creative field, what's the first thing that really pops into your head?
Yeah, for a lot of us, it's probably words just like these. Power, control, getting that seat at the table where the real decisions get made. Now, just imagine stepping into that role over 25 years ago, in an industry that really wasn't built for you to own anything besides your image. That's exactly where our story starts, with Charlize Theron.
She decided to take on a project that pretty much everyone around her thought was career suicide. I mean, this was a massive, massive risk, but maybe not for the reasons you'd think.
The film was Monster, and Charlize Theron's decision to produce it, it wasn't about ambition, not in the usual way. It really boiled down to one single thing: protection. She had to shield this raw, deeply uncomfortable vision of the story from being watered down and packaged for the market. So you've got to ask, why did she have to become a producer in the first place? And what can that decision teach us about what ownership really means? I mean, think about the risks here. They were huge. You had a first-time director, Patty Jenkins. The subject matter was just incredibly dark. The story of Eileen Wuornos, a woman that the world had already judged and thrown away. And here's the kicker. The people funding it, the financiers, they thought they were getting a slick, sensational, marketable movie. They saw a product, she saw a true story that had to be told. So she saw this huge disconnect, and that's when it hit her. This was a critical realization. If I don't step in and take control, the whole vision, the heart of this story, it's going to be diluted, it's going to be rewritten, and it will be completely lost. So she became a producer, not to control the film, but to protect it.
And that right there, that's our first big takeaway. You know, we usually think of ownership as being about profit or about power, but sometimes it's really about safeguarding the integrity of an asset. It's about making sure the thing you believe in doesn't get totally ruined by people who just don't get it.
Okay, but her investment in that truth, it was about to get seriously tested. And this is where the story gets super uncomfortable and incredibly real. To really become Eileen Wuornos, Charlize went through this radical physical transformation. We're talking gaining 30 pounds, wearing prosthetic teeth. She literally erased every single trace of that polished Hollywood image that her investors were banking on.
And that's when the panic started to set in. You know, it starts with just a whisper. A financier's wife sees some of the early footage and asks her husband, totally shocked, "Have you seen what she looks like?" That disconnect was quickly becoming a very real problem. And then you get the climax of the story. It's 3 o'clock in the morning and her phone rings. On the other end of the line is an angry, panicked financier. And the voice just says, "What are you doing? You look horrible." That was the moment. That was her conviction smashing right into raw financial fear.
And this is the part that's just so human, right? She actually admitted that in that moment, she wasn't so sure of herself. There was this little voice in her own head that started asking, maybe I went too far. The doubt was real, and it was overwhelming. But right after that moment of pure doubt, something else kicked in, the investor mindset. Not the financier's fear, but the true investor's conviction. She had poured everything into this vision, and she realized, right then and there, the only real choice was to stand her ground. So what's the upshot? After this huge standoff between creative truth and financial panic, what was the actual true return on her investment? And this is such a critical point. When you don't control the narrative, you ultimately don't control the return. If your image, your voice, your work, if you are the face of the asset, you absolutely have to have influence over its structure. If you don't, you're just talent for hire.
And this really lays out the core conflict, doesn't it? On one side, you have the financier's mindset. It's all short-term, it's fear-based, and it demands approval from others. And on the other side, you have the investor's mindset, long-term vision, actions based on conviction, and a demand for truth. Charlize chose conviction.
So, what happened when she made that choice? Well, Monster got absolutely massive critical acclaim, and Charlize Theron won the Academy Award for Best Actress. Not because she played it safe, but because she invested in telling the truth over getting approval. But look, this whole story isn't just some Hollywood tale, right? It's really about a few questions we should all be asking ourselves. So, let's bring this lesson home. So let's start with this one. Where in your life are you visible?
where people see you doing the work day in and day out, but you have no real influence over the outcome or the direction it's headed.
And, kind of piggybacking on that, where are you the talent, the one with the skill, the one executing the vision, but you're not the owner of the final product? Where are you just participating but not truly protecting the work?
And here's maybe the biggest one of all. What is that core vision in your life, in your career, in your art, your personal project that needs to be protected from being diluted? What is your monster?
Because you know what? Here's the final truth in all of this. The market, and it doesn't matter if it's finance or software or art, it often misunderstands a radical transformation before it ever rewards it. The world might not get what you're doing at first, and that is exactly why your conviction is so crucial.
And that really just leaves us with this final thought. Investing in yourself, in your vision, will often feel lonely before it ever feels legendary. The real victory, it isn't forged in the moment you get applause. It's forged in that 3 a.m. moment of doubt, when you choose to stand your ground anyway.